Well, I'm glad you brought up the key keepers because that is actually my next question. Let's talk about the key keepers, shall we? Yes, it is that. I want to know, like, how did that become a thing? Like, whose idea was it? How did you decide who gets in? All that jazz. Please let us know.
All right, so I'm gonna. All right. To talk about the story of the key keepers, uh, obviously, I have to bring up some stuff, which is like it's not like it's buried or anything like that, but it's just like, oh, remember that type things. So I'm gonna be, very particular on how I
Okay.
explain the story again.
Okay.
So, the key keepers, like, a lot of people like try to get it twisted and whatnot and stuff, but like, don't get it twisted. Like, Gene, Dean, and Jared and Sky. Like, I do that a lot in my head where I just combine words randomly. So Dean, Jared, and Sky would tell you, like, never get it twisted. The key keepers was my idea, right? But a lot of times they make the jokes saying that, you're the leader of the key keepers, or you're the dad of the key keepers, or like the front man of the key keepers. I'm like, no, stop, no, that was never the goal when I want to put this group together, right? And like every time it's like, oh yeah, you're the leader of the key keepers. I'm like, I kind of cringe when I hear that. I'm like, no, man, there's no leader. There was never any leader. Like that was the whole point. So the story runs like this. I really want to put together a group of Kingdom Hearts content creators because at the time, the Kingdom Hearts content was really blowing up around the time of the reveal of Kingdom Hearts 3 and whatnot. And it was like, it was something that was in the space all the time. You could see Kingdom Hearts content being made here, there, everywhere, and whatnot. And I really wanted to put together a group that will help bring that to the next level and bring the community watching that content to the next level. So then I really want, like, I like at that point I already told Sky, I'm like, okay, like I want you in. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so down. But then like, how many members do you want at the time? And I'm like, I want, like I was saying, I want an amount of members because like, oh, 7 Guardians of Light. I'm like, no, that's way too much. I was like, I want an amount of members that will lead to a majority vote if needed, right? So I want that's how I originally envisioned it to be an odd number,
Smart.
right? Uh, but then like later on in the story, you'll see like, oh, that was never needed. So at the time, I was like talking with Dean like a little bit like here and there or whatnot. So I was like, okay, Sky, I want you in. I'll be in as well, and then also I want Dean in as well. Dean, and he's like, oh, Sora on one, and then that was at the time like if Dean ever comes back in the season, that was around the time where he was known as Sora Alam One Gaming. And then, like he's like, bro, I can't believe. Every time he tells me the story about that, he's like, I can't believe I actually put gaming in the word. It rolls off the tongue better when he dropped the gaming, but I was talking with Dean at the time, so I'm like, I want Dean in, and I hit up Dean. I'm like, hey Dean, I'm putting together a group of Kingdom Hearts content creators, and at the time we didn't even have a name, so I want a group, but we didn't figure out the name at the time. So I'm like, okay, Dean, I want Dean in, and then Dean's like, yeah, I'm down, so down, that sounds so cool, right? And when I was talking about that at the time. That's also when I was talking with Volt Edits, Tyler, right? And then Tyler got wind of that, and he was like, "Oh, I really want in on this group. I really, really want in on this group." So, like, contrary to popular belief, Tyler actually made it to the group before Jared. Jared was actually the last person to make it into the group. And I'm like, at the time, I'm like, okay, Tyler seems cool and stuff. And like, okay, Volt, let's get you into the group. At the time when like he heard about it, it was like cat's out of the bag. I'm not gonna tell him no because at the time we were working together as well. And then eventually stuff happened. But at this point in time, it's all water under the bridge. We all 5 of us actually reconvened at the Kingdom Hearts premiere, so that was like really cool. It's like, oh, all 5 original key keepers reunited again.
Nice.
And stuff. So then Tyler was in. So then at the time there was 4 members, and I'm like, okay, we have 4 members, but I mean, like, I need that odd number thing, right? So then around the time that happening, Jared was shooting up in popularity, And then in my comments, a lot of people was like, "Hey, have you ever heard of the Gamers Joint? Like, yo, they got some really cool Kingdom Hearts content." I'm like, "Gamers Joint, like maybe he will be a cool fifth member." And I'm like, "All right, cool." So then the funniest story about that is that here's me logging into YouTube, going into my message inbox to search up the Gamers Joint's name in order to send him a message. I go to my inbox. The Gamers Joint is already in my inbox. It's like, "Hey, I would love to work with you." And I'm like,
nice.
and I message like, "Bro, do I have a story for you?" Like, and so like, "Hey, listen, I was actually like reading this message. I was actually on my way to message you to ask if you want to be part of a Kingdom Hearts group that I'm putting together." And then he's like, "Dude, what? Like, yeah." And I'm like, so we all got into a call. And we all got to know each other a little bit there, and then that was the five of us. And they're like, "Okay, the five of us, that's us. This is the Kingdom Hearts group." And that the reason that there's five of us is that just in case if we need to make a decision on behalf of the group, we can take a majority vote if there is conflicting sides. And and the one thing, like the one HMK stamp rule that I made from the beginning, I'm like, to let you guys know, like the majority vote thing also dictates that there is no leader of this group. There's like no frontman, no leader, no person to make an executive decision, none of that. All decisions made is either unanimously or by majority vote, and that's why we have 5 members. And then, funny enough, on a car, like, okay, so then we had our members, and then we're like, "Oh, we gotta think of a name," and then, bro, like, I already said, I'm like, I don't want no dumbass names and whatnot. So then as soon as I said that, they were like, "Damn, what are we going to name ourselves?" It's like, like, because we were saying, like, we're not going to name ourselves things like the Warriors of the Heart or the Keybladers of Destiny or some shit, right? So then on a car ride home, I'm just pondering this question. I'm like, and then I was like, oh, and then as I'm thinking of the name, I'm like, "Oh, damn, yo, where did I keep my keys?" And then I'm like, Key Keepers. Key Keepers. And then I start playing, and I'm like, okay, it has a nice ring to it, but like it's a bit long, and I'm like, but what if we style it as X Keeper? And I'm like, bro, and then I'm like, so I get my phone, I message Sky, I'm like, "Dude, X Keepers, but it's pronounced Key Keepers." And then and then he's like, "Dude, that's so cool." And I'm like, that's it, that's the name, right?
That is amazing.
And then we told Dean, Sky, and Tyler, and then like Dean, Jerry, and Tyler, and they're like, "That's so cool, yeah." Then that's it. So like stylized X Keepers, but it's Key Keepers because of what Kingdom Hearts does. You know, with the whole Xeno, it's like Key, the most ancient letter. Some say Kai, but the meaning is the same. And I'm like, there. And then we from then on we adopted the Rikusen sigil and a lot of our promotion and stuff like that. So that's how it came to be.
That is one amazing story, man. Thank you for sharing with us with that.
Motown, downtown.